Hello, I'm Richard Mallah, Director of AI Projects at the Future of Life Institute. It's a pleasure to speak at JSAI. The Future of Life Institute is a group of scientists who work to make emerging technologies safer and more beneficial for mankind. Among those technologies, and one of our major focuses, is artificial intelligence. We take a view of multiple time frames outward in terms of the risks and the benefits that we expect from artificial intelligence. We can cast these as short-term, medium-term, and long-term issues. Among these short-term issues are things like legal issues around autonomy for things like home robots or self-driving cars. Among them are also things like autonomous weapons, which we'll get to a little bit later. Medium term, we encounter issues around technological unemployment and potentially around other kinds of disruptive control of AI over the way that we conduct our lives. In the long term, and when we talk long term, we're not talking about hundreds of years even, but probably later this century, as per a survey of AI researchers conducted, which found a median answer of this inflection point that I'm going to be talking about of approximately 2042. We will be getting to artificial general intelligence, and this is likely to be very disruptive in a number of ways, and potentially offers some great opportunities for us as well. So what the Future of Life Institute tries to do is foster the kind of research and dialogue to enable tackling artificial intelligence and developing it and architecting it, coming up with algorithms and techniques that will lead to beneficial artificial intelligence. Safe, controllable, introspectable, interpretable artificial intelligence that will defer to both human values and human control. So we fund dozens of academic research teams around the globe currently doing technical research on this field, as well as legal and economic research as well. So I'm going to be talking today about two major topics from our organization. So in January, we held a conference of about 120 luminaries in mainly artificial intelligence, but also fields surrounding artificial intelligence. And among the work products that came out of that are a set of principles called the Asilomar AI Principles. And these principles are the result of FLI combing through many dozens of documents from around the world, including the Statement of Principles from the Japanese Ministry of Networking and Communications from, I believe it was a year or two ago, as well as British Standards Institute, IEEE, document from the Global Initiative, the White House documents that came out from the Obama administration about the future of AI, as well as statements from the European Union and others around the globe on both policy positions and expectations and opinions around what should be done to prepare ourselves for AI, and what positions and values should we be holding regarding the future of AI, and how we would like to position it as humans living on this globe, expecting a radical change in the way that we will all live, and doing so in a way that will be beneficial to as many as possible. So we combed through these documents, and we crystallized a number of points. I think it was around 60 different points. And then we iterated with the attendees of the conference, even before they came. And I should note that these attendees represented very senior professors within artificial intelligence, founders of large tech companies, founders of very prominent artificial intelligence companies, as well as ethicists and roboticists and sociologists and international lawyers and economists and probably folks from other fields that I haven't mentioned yet. So psychologists, for instance. So we iterated a bit on these principles, finding out what people thought were appropriate, what principles they supported, and new principles from these attendees. And at the actual conference, among the things that we did was we had roundtable discussions where we were seriously talking in depth about each of the principles and commenting and editing them. And in the end, we had votes where people cast their support for each individual principle. And in the end, what came out were 23 principles with pretty strong support across the board. It was not unanimous. None of the principles were unanimous, but we had a cutoff of strong support, and 23 made the cut from these multiple iterations. So they are somewhat similar to the JSAI ethics principles. They are things like that AIs should have human values, or that they should reflect what humans care about, especially for advanced AIs. So a lot of the content of the principles are forward-looking to not just today's AI systems, but looking to scale those systems toward the future. So in addition to things like values alignment, there are, of course, principles around privacy, around security, around having sufficient funding for safety aspects. So recommendations for setting aside some portion for each research project or aggregate funding for things like safety and ethics research. Ensuring transparency and interpretability of systems, especially when these systems are making very impactful decisions that are high risk, pretty important as well. So I encourage the attendees here gathered to check out the 23 Asilomar Principles. I don't have time here to go over all of them, but I think you'll find that they represent a strong cross-current of thought within the AI field as well as within surrounding fields of how we can together keep artificial intelligence beneficial if people were to follow these principles. So one other of these principles that I'd like to mention is what we call the AI arms race principle. This actually splits into two because the concept of arms race, in English at least, is a little bit vague. There is the metaphor where we're talking about essentially a race of capability, just of AI algorithms in general. And there we would like people to have respect for safety and ethics and maintain the space, maintain the ability to have the time to include safety work and safety mechanisms and safety techniques and architectures into their systems to keep them beneficial and aligned and controllable. But there's a second meaning which is more literal of arms race, which is literally a weapons race. Currently, about a dozen countries are working on literally lethal autonomous weapons systems. These are systems that select their own targets and execute on them based on what they have learned and based on their programming. One of the Asilomar principles tries to discourage this dynamic. If you look at the IEEE Global Initiative document, the section on lethal autonomous weapons, it is laid out that there are certain kinds of issues whereby this is actually quite destabilizing for the world, geopolitically, in the coming decades, and something to be discouraged globally. So some of the dynamics that can occur are that there would be global arms races where there's a spiraling dynamic of more powerful, faster, smarter, more independent autonomous weapon systems being developed. And this is something that probably should be discouraged from occurring in the first place. Potentially, these systems can fall into the hands of warlords or terrorists or even rogue police departments that overstep with the amount of power that they get from this kind of physical leverage that has never before existed. These systems are more difficult to defend against than they are to use. In this way, they are similar to biological weapons or chemical weapons, where it's very asymmetric. It's very much easier to use offense than defense here with these types of systems. And this can further lead to other kinds of instabilities. And furthermore, these systems may even escalate conflicts without human understanding or control, or may potentially even initiate them in the first place. So we encourage JSAI to support the efforts at the UN that are happening in August and follow-up meetings in November to start the negotiations around potential curtailing of these types of systems. Thank you all very much.